Your mind is limitless. The possibilities are endless. Awaken Your Mind Magic shows you how you can dream limitlessly and live your life on a new level. Susan Kathleen speaks with ordinary people who are living extraordinary lives using the power of their mind.
Gold on the inside, silver on the outside. Gold on the inside, silver on the outside.
Abundance, prosperity, and success. There are no limits to what you can dream. Join Susan Kathleen on a journey into your dreams, making a difference and living life on your own terms. This is Awaken Your Mind Magic.
Hello and welcome everyone. My guest speaker today is Cara Baxter McDonald. Whoa, that's a big mouthful. From Adelaide, Australia, who is a mindset coach, the author of the ebook Make FiFo Your Bitch, and runs her coaching practice under the name of the Mindz. I met Cara over a year ago when I was invited as a guest on a refresher training in Sydney. The coaching program was intense, long hours, and involved neuralistic programming, timeline therapy, hypnosis, positive psychology, emotional intelligence as an emotional intelligent facilitator, and NLP coaching. It was intense and a lot to learn in a couple of weeks. So I can tell you now, I know firsthand just how qualified Cara is as an amazing coach. Cara says her intention is to support FiFo families through the uncertainty and stress that the FiFo lifestyle can have on the family unit, so that their kids need not go through the same tumultuous tracks that she did. And we'll explain FiFo during our chat with Cara today. Welcome, Cara. It's so good to have you here on Awaken Your Mind Magic.
Thank you. It's so awesome to be here. I'm really excited and really incredibly honoured to have been invited onto your show. Thank you.
Well, I'm honoured to have you here, Cara. You are a powerhouse, and listeners, you got to know she is funny. She's funny and she's fabulous. So, Cara, tell us a little bit about your story. No, a whole heap about your story. How you awakened from adversity into positivity.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess it all started for me back in my early childhood. My dad was a shift worker and later became a FiFo worker. So he wasn't really around a whole lot. My mum, she held the fort, a bit like a single parent running the ship, and yeah, when Dad was home, it was not a lot of fun. He was always really kind of exhausted, and we were always walking on eggshells on the week off that he would be home, rather than it being, a fun-filled week off that, you kind of think that it's going to be when you first go into the fly-in, fly-out work situation. So then by the time I was 12, my parents, they ended up getting a divorce. And yeah, it was incredibly tough on our family. The FiFo lifestyle of, him being away more often than he was home, and just the stress that put on our family. It was something that, they couldn't get past. And yeah, my mum, she fell apart. And as a 12-year-old, with a lot of balls, I guess, I stepped up and just took on a lot of responsibility, a huge amount of responsibility. I looked after my little brother. He's 2 years younger than me. and about 2 foot taller than me now. And we sort of, it was a pretty rough time after Dad left, for a little while. And basically, when I hit the age of about 15, I had developed this responsibility, had kind of, I guess, rolled into this intense sense of need to have control, and I was quite depressed and really anxious. And then I discovered weed and discovered a way to escape from all of that. And shortly after, I had then discovered alcohol and found a way to loosen up and have some fun. So obviously all in the wrong ways, knowing that now, but at the time it was a way that I could really just chill the fuck out and just be me, you know? So I never really developed much of a relationship with my dad for a long time. And I continued on that pathway of abusing drugs and alcohol for my entire 20s, basically. And I put myself in some very compromising positions. I was sexually assaulted on 2 separate occasions. And after a trip to the UK, where I was also found myself in a crew that, you know, drank a lot of alcohol and did a lot of stuff, I came back home to Australia with a severely broken ankle after finding the bottom of a bottle of vodka neat. And yeah, I just hit rock bottom then. And I sort of spiraled into this, you know, this sort of self kind of hatred of, you know, what am I doing with myself? Something's got to change, because like I can't keep on living my life like this. All my relationships around me were just scrambled, and I was fed up. I was fed up with just living this life of this cycle, you know, of just living for the weekends and not really ever getting anywhere. So so that was 14 years living like that. So I then started taking it upon myself to, you know, I did a lot of reading. I watched a lot of documentaries, a lot of kind of self help, as you might call it, or self-development, you know, a lot of positive mindset work that I just sort of, you know, started on that journey myself. And I explored counselors, and I saw some psychologists, and I just found that it didn't really fit me. It was too sort of clinically based for me. It wasn't, and I went through a series of them. I just never really found the right person. In the meantime, I had started rekindling a relationship with my dad, thanks to my brother, actually, who tricked us one year by he was with my dad, and he said he'd called me on the phone, and my brother said to me, oh, Dad wants to say g'day. And I said, oh, right, well, what does he want? And he said, oh, well, I don't know, he just wants to see how you going. Chucked him on the phone. My dad goes, how you going, love? I said, yeah, all right, Dad. How are you? Yeah, all right. Kane said you wanted to talk to me. I said, Kane said you wanted to talk to me. Well, then here we are. So this kind of, you know, thanks to my brother, it was the very first step in us rekindling our relationship. And so, you know, that alongside with some of the self-development stuff that I was doing, it all kind of went hand in hand. And Dad and I inevitably developed a really close relationship. Unfortunately, a little bit too late, because he passed away only probably about 3 or 4 years later. from cancer. He was only 56. Our daughter, his first granddaughter, she was 8 months old. So that was a bit of a rough time. And, it's one of those things that I'd wished that we had, this nice relationship earlier in our life, that it didn't take me 30 years to get there with him. And so, and so that was a huge earth-shattering moment for me, as well as becoming a new mum all at the same time. 2016 was an epic year, to say the least. So then, not too long after that, I was then also invited as a guest to participate in the NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming course in Sydney, where I met you and a bunch of other lovely, amazing people. And intense, yes, to say, yep, would be, if there's a more intense word for intense, that's what I'd give it. It was a lot of, like you said, a lot of information, long days, and but the main thing that the thing that came out of it for me is the simplicity of the techniques that are used in NLP, and how quickly, you can have some massive transformations. And so, so that's what's brought us here to today, with me being an NLP coach now. And I just think it's a real game changer.
It totally is, Cara, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I do appreciate you for being so open about everything as well. And what I'd like to ask you is this. At the age of 12, when you had to take on full responsibility because your mother had actually she'd collapsed and was facing her own situation of severance from a relationship and sadness, how did you manage to get through that and, as you say, help your brother as well?
I put my big girl pants on, and I I was doing things like cooking our dinner, and running the household. Basically, my mum would we didn't really see her for about 3 months. She spent a lot of her time in her bedroom, and I had received a call more than once from her work when she'd not showed up at work, because they were worried about her and whether she'd done something silly. So it was just it was about looking after my brother and myself, and just keeping us on track on a for what sort of life we were used to, going to school every day. And Mum had brought us up to be very independent anyway, which, as kids we despised having a roster to help out around the house. But I thank her for it now. And obviously that all kicked into gear, when I was 12. I was already doing a lot of those things, but sharing that load obviously with her. But yeah, it was just about keeping some form of normality, really, for my brother and I.
So what you were actually facing was post-traumatic stress. Your mother was in the fallout zone as well, and you were the responsible adult.
Yeah.
At the age of 12. Were you offered at any time any form of counselling through this period?
Not that I can recall. No. And, look, like I think Mum did the best with what she, I know that she did the best with what she had at the time. And we've actually since done a lot of work together, because it was that role reversal stayed in place for a long time, a really long time. That would easily have been the 14 years that that I was off the rails. And there was a swap in our roles there, where she would come to me for a lot of things, and And so her and I have both since doing the NLP have done a lot of cutting of the cords and a lot of, putting things back into a place. Like, we communicate so much better now. We understand that, the linguistics of how each other's minds work so much better. So we're able to understand each other a lot clearer. And so, no, there wasn't any counselling offered at the time, but, since we've made up for it since, for sure. We have a really beautiful relationship now.
I certainly actually know that firsthand because I've seen you with your mother, and she's a delightful, very intelligent woman. I can empathize with you about that because I had the same or similar situation with my own mother. And right up until she recently died, I was more the mother-parent figure and she was the child. So I really reach out to you on that, Cara, because it is a load and it's massive from when you're small. I also can understand having to be responsible for a younger brother. And I had a sister as well. And they also relied on me. So I do know that responsibility. I empathize totally. And what I would like to ask is, how did you handle getting your little brother every day to school and doing all the things that a 12-year-old little girl is suddenly thrown into doing?
I think I went with a bit of a do as you're told attitude. He used to call me a bossy bitch for a start. And still probably sometimes does see me that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, he was also pretty responsible for his age. And yeah, we just went about our daily routine, as best we could. And we used to walk to school together at that point as well. And so yeah, we'd get ourselves off ready, pack our little lunches, and off we'd go. But yeah, we worked together on it, but we had some pretty epic fights as well because of it. Because, I wasn't his mum, which he liked to point out every so often. But yeah, we just kind of got on with it.
I hear you with that. And in the time that your father left, you had no contact with him until your brother set up the dual phone call, which was a wonderful surprise.
No, not exactly. We used to have the occasional weekend with him, and yeah, it was a bit of a challenging time. We didn't have a very good relationship, really, with Dad, and so we would go for our arranged weekends with him, and yeah, it was, yeah, I'm searching for the right word. It wasn't until I was a late teenager, I was probably maybe about 17 or 18, and him and I sort of had a bit of a falling out then. But it was it was always just a bit uncomfortable and walking on eggshells around him a fair bit. And yeah, at that point in time when we were kids, I don't have a lot of great memories, unfortunately.
I hear you on that. And basically, as a young tween going into your teens, both parents were removed because they were both in their own zone of pain and what they were going through. Can you explain to the international listeners who have no idea what FiFo is?
Yeah.
Please, can you explain what it stands for?
Yeah, it stands for fly in, fly out. So it's a term that's used for, generally speaking, miners, people working in the mines. Hence the name of my business is In the Mindz. Only it's MIDNDZ. So miners, when they fly in into on site somewhere, and then they're flying out to come back home again, it's usually they're working a roster of, if they're lucky, they get a 1 week on, 1 week off. If they would get some sort of an even roster, 2 on, 2 off. But this year has thrown those out, the rosters out. There are some dads out there who haven't been home for in excess of 147 days now and counting. They haven't seen their families. This is all due to our current pandemic. So it's been even harder than it would usually be on the family at the moment now.
Your coaching actually deals with all of this, and you are able to deal with this because of first-hand experience. What I do understand from many people who are in the FiFo business is this abnormality of these trips where the family is all together. Suddenly, mum and the kids are dealing with things in their own way. Dad comes home, he's got his own set of rules, or everybody's got to be quiet because he's exhausted. So it is an extremely stressful situation for all family members. And as you say, Cara, some people have not been able to get home to their families.
Yeah.
Who do you coach? Do you coach the families all together, or do you work closely with the dads or mums who are flying out and flying in? Explain more what you do in your coaching practice.
Yeah. So to date, I've actually done a combination. I've worked with a combination of both the dad and the mum side of the FiFo family, not the family as a whole unit, but each person individually. So for example, one of my more recent clients, he was experiencing a lot of overwhelm and anxiety, and that for him had developed into panic attacks. And he was not only that was coming out for him at work, but then he was also bringing that home with him as well. And he had started to become, he had been living this parent that he didn't want to be anymore. And he was working a lot of unpaid overtime. He was socially felt really awkward a lot of the time, and basically just felt like he was this walking time bomb around his family, constantly stewing in his own thoughts and that sort of thing. So during over the course, we did a work together on a 12-week program together, and the changes that we went through together, because as a coach, it's when you're working with somebody, you're growing and developing with them as well. It's a beautiful thing. It's almost it's a win-win situation. But the changes that came out in him were just off the charts. Like he told me that he'd felt this huge weight lifted off his shoulders. He was feeling calmer and happier. And he saw this evidence filter in throughout his life, everywhere throughout his life. His work colleagues were commenting on how much he'd changed, which bloke to bloke is a pretty, I think that's a pretty high scale achievement right there. But most importantly, his wife, she was just astounded with the significance of the changes that he had in such a short amount of time. His kids were more settled in his presence as well. The household routines, they were flowing so much better for him. An example of that he gave me actually was because things were calmer and some of the different work that we'd done around the family, sort of his role in the family. He'd been able to regain a half an hour. He said, and then he later said to me, "Oh, it's really only a minimum of half an hour. Sometimes we were an hour every night. We were done and dusted with all that nighttime routine." And I just said to him, "My goodness, I did the calculations, and I said, that's 30 minutes each day is 184 and a half hours every year. That's an entire week of your life you're getting back, man. Like, isn't that amazing? You know, from someone that had come from feeling like there was never enough time, and he was so overwhelmed with having to do, you know, all that sort of the everyday life of the work and the family routine to being freed up in so many ways. It was a really beautiful and such a huge transformation to have witnessed. So you know, I worked with him as the dad of the family, but it impacted the entire family, you know, through the work that he'd done. It's a beautiful thing.
You can see, if you could see Cara's face, obviously I'm speaking to her face to face and we're recording this, but you could see her face, it's glowing. She is genuinely thrilled that she's helped this family and this man. Cara, I'm going to go back a little bit and I'm going to revert back to your story about drugs and alcohol and how easy it is as a teenager to get hooked into this because you're in with a group of people that are all doing it as well. And usually, generally speaking, they've all been going through some form of trauma. So you find your tribe.
Yeah.
When you went across the UK, was it connections that you knew through the connections here in Australia that you hooked up with? Or was it an automatic generation of energy where you found these like-minded people?
Yep. I magnetized the exact same type of people because I hadn't moved forward from where I was. And don't get me wrong, there were times throughout my 20s where I tried to as well. I moved from Adelaide to Queensland at one point to get away from the tribe, as you say, you know, and really what I worked out was that I needed to adjust what was going on inside of me so that I could start attracting, you know, the people that are, you know, are currently my tribe, that's, you know, who I love and adore now, but we're, you know, who we've grown together and yeah. So if you don't fix, I guess, what's going on inside of you, you're going to continue to relive the same cycles. Yeah.
It's so true. And this is where we start working with inner work first, creating the best you before you can actually put that life mask out and help the person sitting next to you, as they say, when you're flying. When you can fly these days, of course, during COVID-19, that would be nice. I wouldn't mind going and helping somebody with a face mask at some time, being able to fly somewhere. Anyway, we will talk about that another time, about flying. What I do want to know as well is when you are in the situation of alcohol and drugs and people take advantage of you because your faculties are not 100% and you are abused sexually. How do you overcome that feeling when you've realized what's happened to yourself?
At the time, I just continued to numb and dull out all my senses using drugs and alcohol. It wasn't until later that I really have worked with it for what it was. At the time, I blamed myself because I just felt like, you know, well, I'd obviously put myself in that predicament because of the state that I was in, and I probably deserved it anyway, you know. So all of those kinds of stories were running through my head, and you know, and it just turned into that sort of self-loathing, which just fed into that addictive cycle anyway. So, yeah.
When you got onto the plane to come back to Australia from the UK, and you were on that plane, what were your thoughts to yourself?
I need to change. I was so tired of feeling broken. And I was in a lot of pain on that flight. I had 2 bulging discs as well as a severely broken ankle. I broke my femur. I had to go to the hospital before I flew so they could cut the cast in half. So, and all sorts of stuff. I couldn't sit down for too long. I couldn't stand for too long. And as you would well know, the flight to the UK is not a short one. It's about, I think whatever route that I took at the time was about 26 hours in transit. It was awful. And yeah, it just really cemented just a real finalization of like, okay, this is it. How much lower can we go? You know? So it was from there. Yeah.
So this is where you, on that flight, had your awakening.
Yeah.
Where you had the epiphany that you weren't being kind to this beautiful person that you are. And she is very beautiful inside and out. I can assure you, she's amazing. Cara, getting off that plane and getting home to your mother, what did she do when you arrived home?
Just gave me a massive hug and I think didn't want to let me go because there was talk prior to that I was potentially going to stay in the UK long term. And you know, and she I think would have, you know, knowing what I know now, prayed to all the gods that she could that wouldn't happen, that her daughter would come back home safe to her, and I did. A little bit broken, but I was still in one piece effectively. So yeah, that was and it was actually her 50th as well when I came back. That was the date that I'd come back for. So yeah, it was so nice to be home around familiar surroundings and
So you were working into changing. You were broken in more ways than one, in spirit and in your bones, in your body.
Mm.
Your mum accepted you back beautifully, and it was her 50th. So you had a lot to go forward to and to live for. When you speak to me about that feeling of shame, that sadness that you have, and then your recognition of where you are and how you must change. Who were your mentors? You said you did a lot of listening and learning of people who go through this change where you learn in the quantum field that it is all a matter of how you think.
Mm.
It appears to me you were self-healing. You didn't ask for any form of professional help at all.
Mm.
Talk to me about that.
One of the first books I picked up was Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. And that just spoke volumes to me. It makes a lot of sense and still does to me that a lot of our physical ailments are in fact caused by what's going on with our mental health. And I'm still, you know, very much, I've got my go-to, The Secrets of the Body Language book that's basically my go-to Bible now as well. Whenever I have an inkling of anything, I'm like, oh, what's that related to? So you can heal your life through positive, not necessarily even positive thinking, but working out, you know, where your thoughts and your mindset need to be altered and explored and in effect fixed, you know, because if you don't listen to your mind, and ultimately it comes out in your body. So that was one of the very first books that I read. Also, I'm just looking up my bookshelf now, The Art of Extreme Self-Care by Louise's offsider at the time, Cheryl Richardson. That book spoke volumes to me as well, because I didn't understand what self-care meant at that time. It's not all about bubbly baths and foot spas, you know what I mean? It's about creating healthy boundaries, and it's about putting yourself first before you're able to look after other people and be responsible for other people. And yeah, and I did see some counsellors along the way as well, but like I said earlier, it didn't quite sort of gel with me, and so that's where now, having studied the NLP, that's been the game changer for me. But yeah,
it certainly has. I've watched you on your journey in over a year, and from when I first met you to now, you are incredible. And what I would like to also share with everybody, because you are a natural carer, what industry were you in before you took the leap and went into your own business as a coach?
Yeah, so I worked in aged care for about 8.5 years, 9 years. So I started out as a carer. I worked in residential care to begin with, and then I started working in community, where I would basically go to elderly clients' homes. I would support them with, personal care, take them shopping, social support, and all those types of things. There was a lot of cleaning houses involved at that point. And I progressed through that and became a coordinator. And then eventually for the last 5 years while I was in that role, I was assessing. So I would actually be the person who would interview the client and basically coordinate what services or supports that they needed to be able to remain in their own homes. So I would be the person that would organise, the person that would do the cleaning and take them shopping and all that kind of thing. So, yeah.
What are your thoughts on ageism?
Explain to me what you mean by ageism.
So for instance, when we, in the correct society, where people should not be unkind to older people, what are your thoughts about the abuse of the aged?
Yeah. Well, for a start, any abuse toward elderly is disgusting. People need to realise how much abuse toward anyone is disgusting, let's face it. People need to realise the quality that the older person has in our lives. The things that I learnt, I honestly, I should make my next book about that. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't take a valuable lesson of some way, shape or form. And I just found so much power in their knowledge and in their experiences. And yeah, and I thrived on that. I frothed out on a daily basis.
Do you believe that the elderly should be the storytellers to our youth?
Absolutely. I believe they should be a lot more involved in bringing our children up. I saw a magnificent article once, and I'm sure it was somewhere fantastic like Finland or the Netherlands or somewhere where they actually integrated the daycare centres with the residential care facilities for the elderly. And I just thought, wow, that is just exactly what we need, because not only was that giving the older person who was in the residential care facility that purpose to live for tomorrow, which is one of the things that you see they lose the purpose when moving to a residential care facility. So it brought that back for them. And then the kids then learnt from then from the older person, all of their, you know, their experience and their values, and you see children and the way that they connect with grandparents and with older people, and it's a beautiful thing. And I think it absolutely should be something that needs to be addressed, that we could work toward. We could have a business idea here, Susan.
It totally is one. So keep that thought there, Cara, because you've got the experience. So that's why I brought it up. And this is now an open mic suggestion to you to move into that as well, because I've seen you with people, and from the young to the old, you're incredible. Now, you're an incredible mother. Talk to me about your children.
Okay, my baby girl, she's not such a baby anymore. She's 4.5, starting school next year, and she rocks my world. She's amazing. She's such a beautiful little character. She has us laughing all the time. She's really well mannered. She's really well balanced. She just started gymnastics. We had our officially the first ever gymnastics class last night. I'm officially a dance mum.
Cool.
Oh God, please God help me. And yeah, she's just a real little go-getter. She loves camping. She's been brought up with, the first time we ever took her camping, she was only 12 weeks old. So she hasn't had much of a choice in that department. So luckily for her, she loves camping. But yeah, she's the sort of kid that people ask us to look after. Can we have Tamsin this weekend? Do you think that will be all right? And it got to a point between the 3 sets of grandparents that she has where we had to actually start exercising our right to say no, because we were like, we're missing out on her. You know, we want to hang out with her this weekend, actually. So yeah, but it's an epic juggle, because, you know, as you identified earlier, I was working aged care as well as working this coaching business, which I'm now 100% my professional 100% into now. But, you know, for a long time there, it was really full on, and I'm really lucky. Or, you know, my husband and I, we look at each other and say, God, we got lucky with her sometimes. And then we go, nah, we're just fucking good parents. So we sort of go bit between, you know, like the to and the fro. But she is a bloody good kid. We couldn't ask for a better kid.
I'm really pleased to know that, and I look forward to meeting her. Tell me about your husband. How did you meet him?
Actually, camping. Yeah, we've got quite a beautiful story about how we met. A friend of mine had taken me camping to a mutual friend's block of land, and this was back in 2010. So yeah, this will be our 10th year together this year, and we spent the weekend camping there, and it wasn't until, so that was the June long weekend. It wasn't until my same friend's 40th later that year, in the November, where we met up again. But all through the course of those months, kept being asked, Shawnee wants to know how you going? How are you? All this and that. And so by the time we got to my mate's 40th, everyone was it was kind of, it was real schoolgirl. Actually, there was this real schoolyard kind of, you know, giggly sort of anticipation around it when we sat next to each other at one point. You know, all his boys were like, ooh. And it was just, it was really funny. And then a couple of days later, one of his friends rang me and asked if it was okay if he could give Shawnee my number. And so all week I waited for this phone call to come through. And it didn't for a couple of days. And then I finally get this message that says, oh, it's Sean here, wanted to see what you're up to this weekend. I said, okay. All right. He says, I'll call you. either the Friday or the Saturday. There was no sort of, commitment to which day. So it gets to the Saturday night, Susan, right? And it's 9 p.m. on the Saturday night. The weekend's, fairly well over its halfway mark by now. And I'm there with my girlfriend, and we were enjoying we'd cooked up a roast, and we were having a glass of wine, and we're watching this movie. And I said to her, what should I do? Should I ring him, or should I wait for him to call me? And she goes, no, you should ring him, but just wait until this movie finishes. Next thing, power goes out in the house. I'm not even kidding you. The power then proceeded to go out another 5 times over the course of the night, but there was no storms. It was a balmy night. There was no reason for the power to have gone out. It just went out literally the minute after she said, wait until this movie finishes. So I ring him, and the phone's ringing, and it's ringing, and he picks up and he goes, Kaz. And I said, why haven't you called me yet, you peanut? And literally, he ended up coming over and joining my friend and I, and we have been inseparable ever since. From that.
I love that story. It's delightful. Well, obviously the magnetism was there, and you were making all the lights go out even. So that's fantastic.
When something's meant to be.
Oh, that's right. It's the law of attraction. That's how it works. Cara, tell us more about your book.
Okay. So Make FiFo Your Bitch. It's an audio book that I'm currently producing and will be releasing later today.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So basically it's to support people in the, in the challenges of living the FiFo lifestyle. All right. So obviously, a lot of what we just sort of talked about, the pressures that FiFo work has on a family, and the separation that can cause between the person working away and the family members left at home. And so basically, it's a short audio book. I decided to go with audio because I know that time is of the essence, and if we can listen to something whilst we're doing the dishes or driving from A to B, then there's a much higher chance that we'll actually make time for it. In saying that, I have actually put in a couple of really short activities that could be, ideally be written down, but to be really just pondered, and just to help people to get back into that headspace of, okay, why did I start working FiFo in the first place? What are the benefits of me working away? What was it that I decided to make this massive sacrifice to work away for? And am I getting toward those goals that I set out for myself? And and just how you can go about achieving them. So it's really just it's a bit of fun, and it's I've had a lot of fun with it as well. Anyway, I've with my research, and I've had a couple of really, really great people to bounce some ideas off. I've had a lot of support around it. So so it's going to be some good fun, and just to really help, support people to flip their mindset. And best of all, it's a freebie.
And that brings me on to saying, do you have a strategy session that you offer? Obviously, you're offering your book, which is wonderful. So the listeners will be able to get hold of you to get your book. Do you offer strategy sessions to people?
I do, yeah. So basically, our first point of contact is completely free of charge. It's the idea is just to have a casual chat with to work out what it is that you're needing and how I'm able to support you in that, and really to work out whether we're a suitable connection for each other as well. and just to take it sort of from there. And from that point, I really tailor design packages for people. We've got, I do the shorter style package. We can work together in one single day over the course of several hours and have an entire breakthrough session, or we can really work together for over the course of, like I said, the client I referred to earlier, we did a 12-week program together. Basically, we touched base over Zoom online every fortnight. He just popped out for his lunch break, and we did sort of 60 to 90 minutes together every fortnight over the course of 12 weeks. So, it's pliable, and they're sort of tailor designed to suit the individual person's needs.
Sounds fantastic, Cara. And how do the listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So of course I'm on all the socials. My business Facebook page is In the Mindz, MINDZ. I'm Cara _In the Mindz on Instagram. And then my website is www.inthemindz.com.au. And that also has all of my information and contacts on there as well as, yeah.
So thank you for that, Cara. I will make sure that all your links are with the podcast when it's uploaded onto Apple and all the other places that it goes to. Before we wind up here, what is one piece of advice that you would give to a 12-year-old child who had been in the same situation as you and is currently possibly experiencing it, or the inner child of a person who simply cannot get over or through that depression and sadness?
I would say don't be too proud to reach out and ask for some help. People are so happy to help and support each other, but for some reason or another feel that we can't ask for it in return. And so my advice to anybody experiencing depression or, any of those types of mental illnesses, that you reach out and work through it and get it out and, and move forward. Yeah.
Thank you for that wonderful advice, Cara. I know a lot of people really appreciate it. So thank you so much for being with us here today on Awaken Your Mind Magic. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to your beautiful, sparky self. You're an incredible person and a brave, bold, beautiful woman. Thank you, Cara, for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm so humbled, and thank you so, so very much again for having me on your show. I am incredibly honoured. Thank you.
Bless you, darling. We'll be speaking again soon. Bye now. That's Awaken Your Mind Magic for another week. If anything you've heard today has really impacted you and you want to know more, or you would just like to connect with me, then visit my website, awakenyourmindmagic.com, and reach out for a free one-on-one discovery session with me.
Silver on the outside, silver on the outside, gold on the inside. Silver on the outside, gold on the inside. Silver on the outside.
Tune in next week, where I'll be discussing more tools to unlock your dreams and live a limitless life that you would truly love to live. I'm Susan Kathleen, and this has been Awaken Your Mind Magic.